Benjamin Netanyahu addresses the UN General Assembly.
I have a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you.
Plus, Volodymyr Zelenskyy meets with Donald Trump.
In his opening remarks, President Zelenskyy said that he plans to present his victory plan to Donald Trump. And why is he doing it now? It's because he said that no matter how much Ukrainians struggle, how much they fight, it is unlikely that the war would end by November. So they need to work with both candidates.
And later, the mayor of New York City is indicted on federal corruption charges. Today is Friday, September 27th, and this is VOA's Flashpoint. Good evening, I'm Steve Karish in Washington. The war in Gaza returned to center stage at Thursday's UN General Assembly with a speech from the Palestinian president. VOA's UN correspondent Margaret Bashir was there.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas received a show of support as he took the podium and spoke about the more than 41,000 Palestinians who have died in the past 11 months of Hamas-Israeli fighting.
Hundreds of Palestinian families have been annihilated. Entire family names have been wiped out of the civil record. More than 100 families have been completely wiped out of the civil record. They no longer exist. Thousands have died because of the spread of disease and epidemics and the shortages in medicine and water.
Abbas did not name Hamas, but he referred to the October 7 terror attacks, condemned the killing of all civilians, and called for the release of all detained persons, an indirect reference to the hostages taken from Israel. He called on the international community to act to end the war.
Stop this crime. Stop it now. Stop killing children and women. Stop the genocide. Stop sending weapons to Israel. This madness cannot continue.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address the assembly on Friday after delaying his trip due to the military escalation with Hezbollah militants in Lebanon. American and French diplomats have proposed a temporary ceasefire to calm tensions after a wave of Israeli attacks and airstrikes on southern Lebanon and Hezbollah rockets launched at Israel. In Haiti, gangs have been terrorizing the population, taking over parts of the capital and kidnapping, raping, and killing civilians. In June, Kenya deployed around 400 police as part of a multinational force to help quell the violence. Edgar Leblanc-Fille is the president of Haiti's Presidential Transition Council.
The national security forces, with the support of the mission, have already demonstrated tangible results on the ground, making it possible for the population, little by little, to see normal life restored. But a lot still remains to be done.
Kenyan President William Ruto said he would be sending another contingent to Haiti by January, and he urged more countries to support the mission with needed equipment and funding.
The progress so far in Haiti demonstrates that what was once deemed mission impossible is indeed a present and undeniable possibility.
The annual UN meetings always attract a wide variety of protesters. On Thursday, as the Palestinian president spoke, supporters gathered a few blocks from the UN headquarters to demand a ceasefire in Gaza. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, the United Nations.
A defiant Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the UN on Friday. He reiterated that Israel will continue attacking Hezbollah for as long as it remains a threat.
Just this week, the IDF destroyed large percentages of Hezbollah's rockets, which had built with Iran's funding for 3 decades. We took out senior military commanders who not only shed Israeli blood, but American and French blood as well. And then we took out their replacements, and then the replacements of their replacements. And we'll continue degrading Hezbollah until all our objectives are met.
Netanyahu also places the blame for the war with Hamas and for the current escalations with Hezbollah on their chief sponsor, Iran. Netanyahu warned that Israel will retaliate if it's hit first, and he says his country can reach anywhere in the region.
I have a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you. There is no place in Iran that the long arm of Israel cannot reach. And that's true of the entire Middle East.
Netanyahu was joined at the UN by families of some of the hostages taken on October 7th, who cheered when he spoke of defeating Hamas and bringing the hostages home. He expressed his belief that it's unfair for Israel to be singled out for defending its territory and its people from terrorists. And he further reiterated his assertion that the Israeli military goes to great lengths to protect civilians. After Hezbollah's 2006 war with Israel, the group built up an arsenal of more than 150,000 rockets and missiles with Iranian help. This according to American researchers citing Israeli estimates. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in that UN speech that Israel has struck a large number of those missiles since last week. Benam Ben Tablu is a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, where he researches missile capabilities of Iran and its proxies. My colleague Michael Lippin caught up with him on Thursday at a Washington conference of the National Union for Democracy in Iran. He asked how many of Hezbollah's missiles are powerful enough to reach into central Israel.
So we don't know the number based on range, but the Israelis have occasionally floated out numbers in the low hundreds or potentially low thousands are precision guided. And that's really the revolution we've seen in the past decade with Iranian material support to Lebanese Hezbollah, that it's not just about the range, because obviously they have shorter range stuff, they have closer range stuff, they have tactical systems, but they have higher and faster flying systems that are ballistic missiles with fins, with guidance, and that's what the Iranians have been providing them with. And in this instance, we recently have seen history made because Hezbollah has recently fired a ballistic missile for the first time ever at Israeli territory proper.
Yeah, that's a reference to the missile that was intercepted early Wednesday, targeting Tel Aviv. It was brought down in the air, didn't cause any damage. Why do you think Hezbollah did that?
I still think that was a political signal by Lebanese Hezbollah. Again, we don't know exactly how many ballistic missiles they have in their arsenal, but largely Hezbollah is trying to signal that they will be undeterred by Israel's new and I would say rather bold campaign following the beeper attacks, the walkie-talkie attacks, the targeted killings, and even the targeted strikes against launchers, drones, and other military capabilities Lebanese Hezbollah has. Hezbollah is trying to say, you will not get me to stop firing, as I have started on October 8th, until you end the war in Gaza.
Well, Israel is going after missile stockpiles. It's been telling Lebanese to get out of their homes or any buildings where these weapons are stored. Is there any sense of just how many missiles Israel has taken out and what kinds of missiles Israel may have destroyed so far?
The IDF has put out some videos about striking potentially what in my view could be a jet-powered drone, but the Israelis are saying is some sort of older, hobbled-together Russian variant of a cruise missile. There are some numbers in the low double digits of how many percents of Hezbollah's PGMs and rocket and missile arsenal, or
precision-guided missiles.
Precisely, yes, that they have taken out. There's no way to verify some of these numbers, and I still think that it may be a bit more optimistic to take them at face value. But this is the goal of Israel's campaign in the short term, to either get rid of the capability or get rid of the capability to launch these systems. And in so doing, force Hezbollah to, one, turn off the fire, and two, move back from its positions south of Litani and to go north of Litani.
Now, these missiles do require launchers to actually get them into the air. If we assume that Hezbollah has upwards of 100,000 various types of missiles and rockets, how many actual launch machines or vehicles do they have to fire those things off.
This is one of the great intelligence questions, not just of Hezbollah, but of the entire axis of resistance, which the Islamic Republic has equipped with drones, cruise missiles, and even ballistic missiles. We don't even have a good number for how many TELs, is the proper term, transporter erector launchers, that Iran has. Some public estimates say that it's a very low number. So that means that there is a ceiling to how many times Hezbollah can use that one launcher before exhausting it. And unlike rocket launchers or even much more closer range stuff, missile launchers, these transporter erector launchers, are bigger, they're more mechanical.
Well, what do they look like?
Sometimes they're on the back of trucks, actually. So it's a much bigger target. Otherwise, there could be rail launchers that could be portable. Otherwise, they require a greater manpower and man presence to prep, particularly depending on the fueling of these systems. Largely, these are solid fuel, so you don't have to worry about too much prep time prior to launch. But it's not like taking out these Katyusha rockets, which when you see some of the stands of them, they're laughable compared to the machinery one would need for a ballistic missile.
Behnam Ben Tablu is a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. He was speaking with VOA's Michael Lippin. Moving now to the war in Europe. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy met with U.S. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris on Thursday to discuss ongoing U.S. support for the war in Ukraine. Congressional Republicans, meanwhile, denounced Zelensky's visit to a Pennsylvania ammunition factory earlier this week, calling it a partisan campaign event designed to help Democrats. White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara has this report.
Russian strikes on Ukraine continued this week in the city of Kramatorsk in the Donetsk region Wednesday. A reminder of the war as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy met with U.S. President Joe Biden at the White House Thursday.
Let me be clear. Russia will not prevail in war. Russia will not prevail. Ukraine will prevail, and we'll continue to stand by you every step of the way.
As part of his plan for victory, Zelenskyy is pushing Biden to allow Ukraine to use American weapons to strike targets deeper inside Russia.
I raised with President Biden the plan of victory. Today we are preparing to discuss the details to strengthen the plan, coordinate our positions, views, and approaches.
The White House says no announcement is imminent. Zelenskyy's visit was marked by Republicans angry about his visit Sunday to an ammunition factory in Pennsylvania, a battleground state in the November U.S. presidential election. Republicans alleged the visit was, quote, a campaign event designed to help Democrats, and they called for the firing of Ukrainian ambassador to the United States, Oksana Markarova. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson.
We're in the middle of a hotly contested national election, and we don't need foreign countries intervening and letting their opinions be heard at a time like this.
Zelenskyy held a separate meeting with Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee. She underscored that it's up to Ukraine to decide how the war will end and criticized Republican Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance, whose proposal to end the war would mean Ukraine has less territory and will not join NATO.
These proposals are the same of those of Putin. And let us be clear, they are not proposals for peace. Instead, they are proposals for surrender, which is dangerous and unacceptable.
On Friday, Zelenskyy is set to meet with Republican presidential nominee, former President Donald Trump, who has in recent days increased his criticism of the Ukrainian leader and the Biden administration, blaming them for prolonging the war that followed Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022.
A deal could have been made if we had a competent president instead of a president that egged it all on. And Biden and Kamala allowed this to happen by feeding Zelenskyy money and munitions like no country has ever seen.
Trump's comments have created anxiety not only in Ukraine, but also in some European capitals that have been supporting Kyiv's war efforts. Ian Lesser, Distinguished Fellow at the German Marshall Fund of the United States, via Skype.
To turn that around and suddenly give Moscow a great deal more leverage by calling into question the flow of arms to Ukraine, political support for Ukraine, etc., is handing a victory to Moscow.
Ahead of Zelenskyy's visit, the U.S. announced $8 billion in new aid for Ukraine, including a Patriot air defense battery and other weapons. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News at the White House.
You're listening to Flashpoint from the Voice of America. I'm Steve Karish in Washington. Our coverage of Ukraine continues with the news from Kyiv in just a moment. Up first, though, as we heard, President Zelenskyy met with former President Donald Trump on Friday. In fact, that meeting is going on now as the show is being produced and recorded. For a look at what to expect from that meeting and why it's important, I'm joined by Tatiana Voroshko. She's managing editor of VOA's Ukrainian service.
In his opening remarks, President Zelenskyy said that he plans to present his victory plan to Donald Trump. And why is he doing it now? It's because he said that no matter how much Ukrainians struggle, how much they fight, it is unlikely that the war would end by November. So they need to work with both candidates on the steps, how can they bring this war to a conclusion. And yesterday he also met with Vice President and Democratic nominee Kamala Harris.
Is there a sense in Ukraine among Ukrainians that a Harris or a Trump victory in November would be better for American aid to Ukraine? And perhaps that's why there's a lot of eyes on this meeting today?
I would say that Ukrainians are watching American elections very, very closely. There are obviously different opinions, which president would be more helpful for Ukrainians. There's also different opinions among Ukrainians who are voters in these U.S. elections, but definitely I think there are a lot of single-issue voters among Ukrainian Americans in the United States who are very closely following, and every statement matters.
As we heard in the previous report, there's been some controversy surrounding President Zelensky's visit to an ammunition factory in Pennsylvania. What's the story behind that? Why is this an issue?
Okay, why did it even go? So they came there with kind of like three purposes in mind. First of all, Ukrainian delegation came to the ammunition factory, which produces 155 millimeter shells, which is in a huge need on the battlefield for Ukraine, together with the representative of the Pentagon and the State Department. And they talked with plant management about how to increase the production and maybe having some co-production with Ukrainian factories. And the second reason they came to thank workers, to thank Americans, and they work in 3 shifts, and they do very important job to help Ukrainians on the battlefield. And the third reason they came is that they also had a head of Zaporizhia region in Ukraine with them. And he signed agreement with Joe Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, on cooperation between the Pennsylvania state and Zaporizhia Oblast in Ukraine. And this is nothing new. This is a 6th agreement of this kind. Previous 3 states which signed these agreements have Republican leadership, and 2 others have Democratic leadership. And also Ukrainian president, after the NATO meeting, went to Utah, where the governor of Kyiv Oblast signed an agreement with Utah governor about cooperation between Utah and Kyiv Oblast. And the Utah governor was also accompanied by Republicans. So that was, I would say, for Ukrainian side, that was unexpected to have this reaction. So it's for them, it's maybe even hard to fathom the controversy.
So it's more an issue of American politics than anything to do with Zelenskyy or Ukraine.
It looks this way, absolutely looks this way.
We'll leave it there for today. Tatiana Voroshko is the managing editor for VOA's Ukrainian service. Tatiana, thanks for taking the time on what is no doubt a very busy day to chat with me.
Thank you.
For more on the Zelenskyy-Trump meeting, follow the latest developments on voanews.com. And as the diplomacy is ongoing in New York, the shelling and attacks are ongoing in Ukraine. Our correspondent in Kyiv, Anna Chernikova, has the latest.
In the early hours of Friday, Russia conducted another missile and drone attack across Ukraine, targeting southern and central parts of the country. According to Ukrainian officials, 1 drone also entered the airspace of Romania. The Russian military also launched 1 missile from occupied Crimea and 2 from the Black Sea. As a result of the Russian attack, 3 people were killed and 11 injured, including a child in Izmail, local authorities reported. Later in the morning, Russian forces launched ballistic missiles on the city of Kryvyi Rih, targeting the district police office. At this point, local authorities confirmed 3 people were killed and 6 were injured as a result of the attack. Reportedly, there are more people under the rubble. In addition, Ukrainian military officials reported that Russian troops also attempt a large-scale assault in the Kupiansk in the area of Pishane. The intensity of the shelling also increased in the settlements in the Donetsk region and the bordering Kharkiv and Dnipropetrovsk regions. Meanwhile, President Zelenskyy is on his last day of his visit to the US. On Thursday, Zelenskyy met with President Biden and Vice President and Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris. The meeting was perceived positively in Ukraine as Ukrainians see the US as the main ally whose decisions are crucial for Ukraine's defense. As President Zelenskyy mentioned during his meeting with Kamala Harris, US support will help Ukraine protect its people and end the war at last.
We have to end this war. We need a just peace, and we must protect our people, Ukrainian families, Ukrainian children, and everyone from Putin's civil. And we are grateful to America for supporting Ukraine all along.
President Zelenskyy will meet with Republican candidate former President Donald Trump midday Friday in New York. Ukrainians are anxious about this meeting because Trump and many Republicans have shown more hesitation to help Ukraine. Ukrainians are also looking forward to the meeting in the Ramstein format scheduled for October 12th in Germany, that will be chaired by President Biden along with other leaders of the allied countries and President Zelenskyy. One of the most awaited decisions would be whether Ukraine will get permission to attack the targets deep into Russia with long-range missiles provided by the allies. Anna Chernikova, VOA News, Kyiv.
And still more news from New York. The mayor, Eric Adams, has been indicted on multiple corruption charges by the U.S. government. For a look at what it means for the man in charge of the U.S.'s most populous city, I'm joined by VOA's New York bureau chief, Igor Tihanenko.
U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York has indicted the current sitting mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, on 5 criminal federal charges, some of which are bribery, wire fraud, and conspiracy to solicit campaign contributions from foreign nationals, namely from Turkish businessmen, several businessmen, and a government official. So, as indictment alleges, he got free flight upgrades and hotel rooms in exchange for pressuring the New York City Fire Department to expedite the approval of the opening of a Turkish consular building. What's interesting here is that the prosecutors allege that all these illegal actions stretch back all the way to 2014. And now we have to say outright here that he vehemently denies all those charges.
Was this a surprise to the people of New York?
Basically, the short answer is no. For many, many years, there were corruption allegations swirling around the current mayor. Him and his administration officials have been accused of all kinds of wrongdoings.
How much support does Mayor Adams have from the people of New York now?
Well, some people support him. They do believe that it might be just all political, that it's political enemies that got together and want to kind of push him out. He said he was going to run for re-election. But some say, no, it's time for him to go. And some said outright that New York knows better, that it's quite embarrassing that the sitting mayor of the largest city would be accused of those criminal things.
Igor Tihanenko is our bureau chief in New York. Igor, thanks for your time. Thanks for your reporting on this.
Anytime.
And that's going to wrap it up for us today. There's more VOA coverage 24 hours a day on our website, voanews.com, and across our social media platforms. On behalf of everyone here at VOA, thanks for listening. Till next week, I'm Steve Karish.
For deeper dives and expert analysis, listen to VOA Podcasts. Issues in the News explores the biggest stories every weekend, while International Edition keeps you informed every weekday. Plus, with the 5-minute newscast at the top of every hour, you're always up to date.